Happy fall, y'all. I don't remember if I filmed in my kitchen since I decorated it. I'm pretty sure that I have, but I haven't shown you this. Me and my friend Judy went to Home Goods and we found these, and oh my fucking god. These are the cutest towels in the entire world. I got this one. And I got the Boo Crew. Oh my god, I'm fucking in love. We each bought one pack and then we separated them. I hate us. Like, I don't know what I'm ever gonna do with these, but I needed them and I bought them. I also bought an apron. You can kind of see it back there. It says get lit and then it has pumpkins on the bottom, and I need to film a cooking video in it. So if you have any recommendations for what I could cook, let me know. But this is not a rambly video, surprise. I'm back and I have more Let's Not Meet stories that I'm really excited to read. I go through weird binges of my own channel where I just literally sit there and watch myself for like hours. And I found one of my old story times where I talked about a little boy that I was like, I guess babysitting. I wouldn't say that I was babysitting him, but I was gonna sleep over at my friend's house and then she wanted to sleep over at her friend's house. So we all went to her friend's house and they were watching their little brother, who was like literally the craziest son of a bitch that I've ever met. Like, this little boy was threatening to kill us and had a knife and trying to get into the bedroom. If you haven't seen that, I'll link it down below. But it's a very long story that I'm not going to get into because I won't shut up. But I figured that I would go on Let's Not Meet and find babysitting stories, like babysitting horror stories to read. I've been trying to think of almost like categories in Let's Not Meet. And so I've done Tinder stories and now I'm doing babysitting stories. If you guys have any other categories that you want me to look into, let me know. I want to do another Tinder video like that, the Let's Not Meet. It's also really stormy right now in Arizona. This whole week is supposed to be like 80 degrees, 90 degrees at the highest, which is so weird because last week it was like 110 every single day. So I don't know where this came from, but it's like really gloomy outside. I think it's gonna rain. It's also monsoon season, so it's gonna be like a dust storm. But I'm pretty sure it's supposed to start thunderstorming around 4 p.m. and it's like 12 right now, so I have to film videos very quickly today. But okay, let's get started. I'm sorry. Okay, the first story says, the babysitter from my nightmares. Also just realized that it's super windy and things are banging on my window, so if you hear that, I apologize. The story I'm about to tell is a little difficult for me to talk about for two reasons. One is that the main part took place when I was around 4 or 5 years old, which makes it difficult to remember most details surrounding the story, which is part of the reason it's haunted me for 20 years. The other reason is this story makes me feel uneasy to even really think about, and this might be only the third time I've ever really told it in full. So quick background to this story is that I was born and raised in an extremely close big family. We all live within about a mile from each other and around a large park in a small Texas town. Unrelated fun fact for those horror fans out there, this park is the present day location of the majority of the town that dreaded sundown murders. Wait, I don't even think I know what that is. Now, my family was jam-packed full of aunts and uncles, and I'd say I saw them all at least once a week my entire childhood. I can't stress enough how close we all were growing up, and how trusted they were, as it plays an important part to the story. So this story came up recently between my older brother, my mother, and I, because they opened up about a series of nightmares I've been basically plagued with for as long as I can remember. These nightmares are always similar, and basically always consist of me, as a small child, in my childhood home, attempting to escape my house while something horrible chases me. This something is never actually visually seen, but it's more like I sense this massive looming person reaching out at me from the dark, and it always catches me before I can get outside. This usually results in me waking up in a sweat. These dreams always seem to center around these very vague yet oddly detailed memories of a babysitter I once had. Here's where it gets odd. These memories I have are almost like dreams. I very specifically remember the details of what was happening and the feelings I had during, but everything else was just out of reach. That goes for the babysitter herself as well. I remember it was a white female who was middle-aged, but I can't for the life of me recall her face. In my memories, it's like I never really got a good look at her. The two specific incidences I remember were not happy ones. The first memory I have is that whenever I would get in trouble for what I have no memory of, I would be forced to sit outside on the back porch in shorts and a t-shirt during winter. I remember I would just shiver and sit there quietly, scared that complaining would cause more problems. The second memory was even worse to me. The babysitter loved to play this game that she made up. She would turn off all the lights in the house and go hide deep in one of the back rooms. I was left in the front room and told that if I wanted food or to watch TV, I had to find her first. I never had any idea where she was hiding, and if I ever found her, she would jump out screaming like a madwoman and chase me. That freaks me out, and I know it's just like a fucking person, a babysitter, but like, can you imagine being a child? That is traumatic. I remember her laughter at my fear. I remember often being so frozen with terror that I would sit on the ground near the front door, too scared to go find her. No matter how long I waited, she would never come out of hiding, no matter how hungry I got. I specifically remember this one time very well. I was so little and scared. I was whimpering as I slowly built up bravery to walk the back hallway looking for her. My hunger felt deadly at this point, and I needed to find her. I checked bathrooms, bedrooms, closets, and nothing. She was nowhere. I remember standing in my parents' bedroom trying to figure out where she could be when I saw her. She was a dark shape under the big bed, peeking at me from under the bed skirt. We stared at each other unmoving. I couldn't make out her face, but I knew she was smiling at me. She was like a crazy feral animal under there. I remember her sliding herself along the floor so fast. Oh my god, can you imagine your fucking babysitter slithering across the fucking floor from under the bed in the pitch black when you're just starving as a child? I screamed and turned to run as she made it to her feet, and then the memory goes dark. I don't know what happened after that, and that scares me just as much as the memory I have of the event. I never shared these memories because they seem so distant, and I often wondered if they were real. One day when I was in my 20s, I mentioned the nightmares to my mother and brother when we were just sitting around talking during one of the weeks where my brother and I were home from college. We often would do this to tell funny stories and remember all of the kids we knew from long before. And then I decided to ask my mom about the babysitter. She seemed confused and told me she never hired babysitters for either my brother or I. Because of how big and close my family was and how protective my mom was of us, she never trusted anybody but family to watch us. My aunts and grandmother were the absolute opposite of the woman that I remember. Loving, kind, fun, and treating me like their own children. I couldn't imagine them doing those things to me. My mom genuinely seemed confused, but also slightly worried, like a mother would be when hearing such a horrible story. She told me she truly couldn't even begin to imagine who I was talking about. With her certainty and the memories being so vague in important places, I decided I must have imagined it all. And then my brother brought it up again the next day when we were driving together. "Yeah, I remember that," he said with some concern in his voice. "Like, I remember seeing you get taken outside and being forced to sit there. I thought it was so horrible. I don't know why we never told anyone." He had no memory of who the woman was, but he remembers feeling defenseless over the whole thing. He had only vague memories of the horrible game she would play, but pointed out how he absolutely had no memory of her ever targeting him with her torment. He remembers the events as if he were an audience member. He did, however, remember things that I didn't. This included that I often got in trouble because I would use my imagination to tell stories, and the babysitter would often get mad when she realized it wasn't true. That resulted in me getting kicked out of the house. I just want to point out that my brother's only 1 year older than I am, so he too would have been very little. Thought about bringing it back up to my mom, but I honestly trust that she has no idea who I'm talking about, and I don't want to make her feel horrible about something so long ago that she had no idea about. I just wish I could understand what the hell happened and who the hell she was. My brother never brought it up again after, but told me at the time that he had always played that memory off as being so young and just misunderstanding whatever was happening. All I do know is babysitter from my nightmares, let's please never meet again. Not even in my sleep. I skim these before I read them because I just want to make sure that they're a good story, but holy fuck, I actually can't imagine that as a child. That is traumatizing. I'm also genuinely curious who the fuck your babysitter was, because obviously it was somebody in your family. I can't imagine that it was just like someone in your house. Who was it? Someone commented too, they said, "Start asking your aunts and cousins. Did you ever babysit me? Did we play hide and seek? I have some memories, but I can't remember who it was." And somebody else said, "Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe it was an aunt or uncle's girlfriend, boyfriend, partner at the time, and they've since been separated." That makes more sense to me because I feel like if it was somebody in your family who you saw every single week, it would be hard to repress that memory. You would remember who it was. But if it was someone temporary in your life, I mean, when you're that little, I feel like it's easy to forget who it was and easily forget their face because they're not really important to you. Sorry, person, but it's fucking scary, and I'm sorry that you had to live through that. I know you're probably not watching this. Sometimes I forget that like not all Let's Not Meet stories are directed to me. And then this next one says, "I'm pretty sure I almost became a murdered babysitter urban legend." I did like a mix of scary babysitters and scary incidences while you are the babysitter. 2 years ago, right around Halloween, good timing, I was babysitting for these 2 ladies who each had a son. They wanted to go out, so I stayed at one of their houses and watched their boys. It was around 8 p.m. and the boys were sitting on the couch playing on their iPads and whatnot when somebody knocked on the door. I asked them if anybody was supposed to come over, and they both said no. I go over and check the eye hole in the door, and it's some guy in a gray hoodie, deliberately hunched over so I can't see his face. Immediately, I'm like, nope. I don't say anything and start pacing around because I don't want to give any inclination that we're inside. A couple minutes later, I check outside the little window through the curtains and he's gone. I didn't want to spook the kids anymore, and there weren't any more knocks, so I just kind of let it go as a prank. Cut it to a few hours later and the moms get back. They ask me how everything was and I say the kids were great, but somebody had come to the door. They ask me what time and I say around 8, and one of the moms starts freaking out and going through her phone. The other one tells me that right around that time somebody had been making strange phone calls to them on a blocked number. They had disguised their voice and were saying things like, "I can see you through your window." Fuck that! Fuck you! They didn't think it was serious because it didn't make sense in the context of where they were, but in retrospect, we're almost positive it was me he was looking at through the window. They escorted me to my car and I touched base later, and apparently nothing strange ever happened after that. I'm just really glad I didn't open that door because I have a feeling in my gut that it would have been really bad. What the fuck? I know I've told this story before, but I'm gonna tell it again because it goes with that story. There was one time my sister was watching me and my siblings because my mom was at my neighbor's house. And my mom calls us panicking because she says there's a weird car driving around the neighborhood. And in my childhood neighborhood, everybody was really fucking close. Like everyone knew each other, and it was a gated community. So if somebody was in there and it was sketchy, everybody was like, yeah, I don't know who this is. I don't know how they got in here. And so my mom called us panicking and she was like, I need you guys to hide in a room. I'm gonna be home ASAP. We don't know who this is. And so my sister literally locked me, all my siblings, and my fucking dog in the bathroom downstairs, which isn't even like a full bathroom. It was just like a powder room. And so all of us are just sitting hugging the toilet crying because we're freaked the fuck out, and it turns out that they were just looking for their friend. But it's still terrifying nonetheless. I mean, okay, the stories don't match necessarily, but like, whatever. This one seemed really interesting and it has babysitter in the title, so I'm gonna read it. It says, jealous husband meets babysitter with an axe after wife cheats on him. This happened ages ago when I used to babysit. I was maybe 13, living in the countryside, and was babysitting most of the children on my street, 20 houses max. This particular neighbor would love to go out on Wednesday because there was this Latin dance class going on in a nearby bar. So I used to babysit for her and knew she would always come back very late. That specific night, the oldest of 3 was a little difficult and didn't want to go to sleep. I struggled putting him to bed, and afterwards I was tired. I studied my math a little and around midnight decided to take a nap until the kid's mom came back. A few minutes after falling asleep, I hear somebody frantically knocking on the door, trying to open it. It was the neighbor with her 2 young children. It was winter and we easily had 3 feet of snow, and the temperature outside must have been around negative 21 degrees Celsius or negative 5 degrees Fahrenheit. The kids only had their pajamas on and an unzipped jacket. She was wearing jeans, a wool shirt, and winter boots. I could see the fear in her eyes as I struggled unlocking the door. I panicked and had her walk all the way around the house to the patio door. When she got in, she quickly told me to bring all the children downstairs, turn off the lights, and not to answer the door to anyone. The kids kept asking, who's daddy going to kill? Who is daddy going to kill? She kept muting them, saying nothing was gonna happen, and then she left. I woke up all the kids, brought them all to the playroom in the basement, and asked them to play silently. The oldest, who hadn't been long asleep, was asking what was going on, and I kept telling him it was a special occasion where he could play late night with his neighbor friends. I calmed down the other 2 kids, telling them that nobody was going to die, but in my mind, my time had come. You were 13 years old having to handle this? Oh my god, I couldn't even speak when I was 13 years old. I don't know how I would like calm down a bunch of children after they like saw their dad with a fucking axe. I could see myself being shot while trying to protect the kids. I was trying to figure out how to stay alive, or at least how to keep them alive. I wasn't trying to be a hero, but I was trying to convince myself that it came down to that, I would have to try and protect them. I called 911, but started shaking and crying so much I didn't know what to do. It was an answering machine, asking if I wanted the cops, the ambulance, or firefighters. What the fuck? I called my mom and told her quickly what was going on, and she called the cops and joined me. As she got in the driveway, the neighbor's husband was walking up the street with a huge axe. My mom got into the house, locked the door, and cracked open a window and asked what was going on while he was approaching the fucking house. He was coming to the house? He asked her to come out and confront him, thinking it was his wife. My mother then explained to him that she was the babysitter's mother and came after getting a worried 13-year-old's call. He then asked us to give him his wife, but we didn't know where she was. He argued a little with my mom, but she was so calm it calmed him down. I still admire her for that night. Wait, so this was like, you were babysitting his children? After 10 to 15 minutes of arguing, he walked back home carrying his axe, and a few seconds later his wife knocked on the patio door behind the house and came in. Okay, just kidding. He thought that you were hiding his wife. She was crying and was apologizing to my mother for the whole situation. She thought her neighbor was home, not the babysitter. My mother asked me to go check on the kids while she was taking care of the wife. A few minutes later, 2 police cars arrived, and they came in, spent time with the wife, asking tons of questions. In the meantime, the woman I was babysitting for arrived, and they interviewed her too. They asked me and my mom if we were ready to go to court if the woman pressed charges against her husband, and surprisingly she never did. Turns out she had just announced to her firefighter husband that she was sleeping with her boss in order to get a raise because they were struggling financially. Oh my fucking god. He got his firefighting axe and said he was going to kill the bastard, but she wanted to stop him. That's why she brought the kids and left. I was always scared of him afterwards, and whenever I saw his children, I would check if they had any signs of violence, but they moved about 6 months later. Let's never meet again. The woman who brought you her kids in the middle of the night, that was the wife of the man who wanted to kill the boss. I understand. Holy fuck. You guys have some traumatizing shit going on, I'm not gonna lie. This is the last one I'm gonna read. This one says, crazy babysitter. They said, I don't even know where to start with this story. I was kind of young at the time, around 7 or 8, but old enough to know what was going on. I lived in a pretty decent neighborhood, but my family was in the process of moving. There was a large mixture of families with children and retired seniors living on my street. There was a neighborhood babysitter who took care of my younger sister when she was too young to go to school. She also happened to babysit me on multiple occasions. She was always kind of rude, a pudgy lady with 2 annoying sons, and a very weird husband. A lot of kids got taken care of by her, so my parents trusted her to take care of us. Everything was somewhat normal, except for the fact that she was kind of rude to everybody that wasn't her kid. Her kids were pretty misbehaved. They were always fighting, hitting each other with plastic swords, and screaming at the top of their lungs. I would lose my shit. At one point, the young toddlers had a nap, and she forced all of her children to sit in a corner and be quiet. it besides her kids. Odd behavior for a babysitter, but we never thought much of it. So wait, would she like bring all of you guys to her home? Like have like a little daycare at her house? Because I used to go to something like that. Oh my god, I just dug up a memory from like the bottom of my fucking brain. I used to go to this lady's house with my older sister and she would watch like fucking 30 kids, but it wasn't like a daycare, it was just at her fucking house. I have a weird memory of looking at Christina Aguilera, the Genie in the Bottle CD. Oh my god, I remember weird things. I have the worst memory, but I will remember the weirdest shit. Another thing to mention is that she took naps while babysitting, as in she didn't pay attention to the kids, she just shooed them away and fell asleep. She was also notorious for giving her sons chocolate milk and telling others they had to have water. My sister and I tried to ignore it, but eventually we were kind of annoyed. My sister had a loud mouth, so she told my mom about how she treats the kids she babysits versus her own children. I'd also like to acknowledge that my sister had just turned 4, so she wasn't great with words. My mom was angry that the babysitter did that, but let it slide, as we were moving in a month and she didn't know if we were being completely honest. The house we moved into is the house I spent a large majority of my childhood/teen years in. Things were normal once we transitioned into our new house, until we got the calls. We changed our phone number, so we weren't sure how the babysitter and her husband found it so quickly. She called every day, saying that we needed to pay her and that we owed her money. She was just angry that we moved and were currently on the lookout for a babysitter that was closer to home. My parents received these calls every day, and they consisted of the babysitter or her husband screaming, which meant that I could hear the voicemails or calls quite clearly. They kept harassing us and my parents grew agitated and worried. It all ended one night around 10 p.m. when my sister and I woke up to the sound of banging on the front door shut. Oh my god. It continued for a good 10 minutes and it was very loud. My sister was freaked out, so I decided to go see if my parents were awake. They were just opening their eyes, kind of confused as to what was going on. My dad told my mom to stay upstairs and he foolishly went downstairs to get the door, as I stood at the railing nervously. My sister stayed in the bedroom because she was unaware as to what was actually happening. When he opened the door, I felt sick and terrified. There was my babysitter and her husband, who managed to find out not only our address but also our phone number. The husband started screaming at the top of his lungs, yelling, "You owe us money, pay us," and shaking a knife. Yes, he had a knife in his hand. My dad told him that we didn't and warned him to leave, unless he wanted the cops to be called. He didn't care. My dad went to close the door, but he stuck his foot in, attempting to get inside. My babysitter was also yelling, but I couldn't hear what she said. We had a phone upstairs, so my mother quietly called the cops as my dad struggled to get the door closed. What are these experiences that y'all have? Seriously. Once he did, the banging and screaming continued. They wouldn't leave our property. I was freaked out, so I started crying. My sister saw me crying, so she did the same. Long story short, about an hour later they left, and the cops arrived, having just missed them. They fucking knocked for an hour? How much could you have possibly owed them? My parents knew their info based on the fact that they babysat us, so it wasn't hard to track them, and they were arrested. I always wondered if their children were home alone or at a sleepover, especially at a time so late. Regardless, they were released a few days later, but not allowed to step foot near our house. I'm not sure if the woman still babysits, but if she does, I feel terrible for the kids. We never really knew what their intention was that night. My dad saw the knife and that they were up to no good. All I can say is psychotic babysitter and her husband, let's not ever meet again. I have nothing else to say, but oh my fucking god. Okay, well, looks like I'm gonna be a stay-at-home mom because no one is ever coming near my children. They're never leaving my sight. They're gonna be homeschooled. I can't deal with other people. Oh my god. I hope you guys enjoyed. What the fuck? These videos always sound like a great idea until I actually film them and then I'm like, well, now I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight. I just love giving myself more reasons to be paranoid just about the world in general. These were just from Let's Not Meet on Reddit, but I do have a subreddit where you guys can submit your stories to me. So if you want to do that, you have stories to tell me, I'll have that link down below. But other than that, I'm gonna go. I love you guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye! Also, okay, I can't tell what's going on with my hair because I haven't dyed it since I said that I dyed it. But right now in the viewfinder, it looks like it has the purple reddish tint to it. But like in my last couple of videos, it looked orange. So like I don't know what's going on. Or not orange, I guess, but it had more of like a warm, like honey tone to it. Like my hair looked brown, but like orange, okay? But now it's like back to looking, I don't know. I'm not trying to understand my hair or lighting or anything. Okay, see ya.